editors. Great. So how many of you are in the wrong cinema? Okay. No, actually all of you that do not consider yourself editors are actually in the right cinema as well. Because one of the really important things I think in filmmaking is to understand other people's work, right? How many of you know of photographers that have never been in an editing room? Yeah? Why? It's such an important place to be to understand how to make good pictures and what pictures we need. I am from Denmark, and that means that I have been inspired and influenced by Danish directors. And one of my big heroes is a guy called Erik Balling. He was a Danish film director from 1924 to 2005. I don't think he did anything in 1924. He had to grow up first. But he said something very interesting. He said, how do we justify a cut? And you know, when we talk about cutting, we're always looking at things when they don't work, right? We go, it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And everybody, all students ask me, yeah, but what is a good cut? You know, how do you make a good cut? And we are not talking about, so how do you make a good cut? Well, Erik Balling said, you have to have character development. And what does that mean? That means that the cut has to make your character develop. Something needs to happen to the character so we understand who or she is. And we need to develop the story when we do a cut. And then also, something has to happen. There has to be some kind of action, which will always also tell us something about who is the character. Action could be, how is he walking out the door? How is he taking up his coffee cup? Things like that, right? And what he then says was a mind-blowing thing, and that was, if 2 out of 3 should comply. So that means, here's a tool for you guys to look at your cuts and saying, have I actually 2 out of 3 and hopefully 3 out of 3 when I do a cut? And this is of course all like really technical stuff. It doesn't seem like a creative thing, but it actually is. If we look back in history, you know, George Albert Smith actually moved the camera for the first time ever and created this, because he knew he had to move the camera because the audience wanted to see what was important in the story. Huh? And this is actually the first real cut. So what's happening here is that Hitchcock is giving an example, and that is different than Kuleshov, because Kuleshov is static, but Hitchcock is adding something that is very important. You see this guy looking at a woman and the child, and he smiles. So who is he as a character? He's a nice and gentle person, and you have sympathies for him. Okay. Well, then let's take the middle piece away, change it with a different picture. Almost naked women, according to British standards, and he smiles. So who is he as a character? He's no longer the benign gentleman. He is an old fart. So, and that is what he calls pure cinematics. Meaning that we are using the montage that we have experienced from Kuleshov, and then we are building on top of that. And let's take some more theory here. I promise you we will come back to real editing in a couple of minutes. So if we look at how editing can be analyzed, Walter Murch has set up the rules of 6. And he says that the most important thing in editing is to create an emotion. And he has actually put up percentages, and let's see if that will work for me. Yeah. So what is important? And we're going to talk about what this actually means. So emotion, how do we create an emotion? Well, depending on who people are, that would be very different. You know, how they feel stuff. We have to move the story forward. Again, when we look at what Erik Balling told us about 2 out of 3, right? We recognize that there are some things that seems to be the same. But one thing that's missing here is the character. This is only an analytic tool focusing on creating emotions. And that is important for you to remember, because I would like to show something different in a second. we have the rhythm. What is rhythm of editing? Is it when you cut? Is it what you cut? So let's talk about rhythm. You have a shot. You need to trim it, an input and an output. You have to choose when to start and when to stop. Everybody understands that, right? Then you have to decide where in the film you put the clip. But if you look down into the clip, there's also what's going on in the clip. Is there a rhythm to the way people move? Is there a rhythm to the way things are played out in the scene? That is like an under rhythm, a division of the rhythm that can also be used as a pulse. Then you have eye trace. That means where you're looking at the screen. And of course it makes sense if you look in this corner and I cut to something where the field of interest is in the opposite corner, the brain will get a little confused and you'll have to figure out where do I have to look, and when you eventually find out where to look, you cut to something else and the audience is lost. Then there is the two-dimensional plane of scene, and that is what we call the 180-degree rule. That means that if you are not at the axis of the eyesight, if you move on the other side of the axis, then you will actually create pictures where it looks like that people are changing places, so talking not to each other, but into the air. And then we have the three-dimensional space of action, and that's all to do with what's happening in the shot and how it's moving. So these are all things we know from the editing school, so things that people will tell you, but we would like to go above that. So when we look at this, it is an individual perception when we create an emotion, right? You feel something different. How old are you? What experience do you have in life? All that. So I can imagine a scene in the editing room where everyone is arguing what is the right emotion, right? So that's really difficult. And on the other side, we can't argue if we have broken the 180-degree rule. That can't be argued. We can decide to break it, but we can't argue that we maybe didn't follow the rule or we did follow the rule, because it's obvious, right, that we broke a rule. The same thing with eye trace. You know, if something is placed on the wrong side of the image, it's non-arguable. So all these things has to do with the technical stuff. But let's have a look at how we can actually analyze why this is working. Why is this working? And this is a shot from Breathless. And now I have a problem because I don't have sound. So I'm trying to figure out how to show this, because one of the points was that so I want to talk about the brain. And there's no sound on that, so they can't stop me. Well, that was actually sound. There was Bela Lugosi, Pull the Strings, right? So why are we actually going into the cinema? Well, first of all, our eyes and our ears are actually connected to what we call the amygdala, and that's the reptile brain. You ever heard of that? Every time you have angst, anxiety, or you feel that there's something in your life that is really difficult, or you don't want to do your homework and stuff, it's the amygdala talking to you. And the reason is that because we have eyes and ears, because Klaus, why do you have eyes? Not
so I can see the predator.
Yeah, and that's me, right? So the reason nature gave us eyes was for us to survive. Okay, and the ears is like a rhetoric question. Yes, because we have like a three-dimensional perception of how we can actually protect ourselves. So what's actually going on in the cinema? We have like a Dolby Atmos system, and even probably something even more wild. We have a really good projection system. The eyes and the ears connected to the lower basal ganglia of the brainstem cannot differ between real thing and cinema. So what you are doing to yourself, ladies and gentlemen, and you, is that you are actually in constant stress, because your intellect is saying, "Oh, it's just a movie," but your amygdala, your reptile brain, is really scared. All your muscles wants to run out of the cinema if you're watching a horror film. And if you're with your girlfriend watching a romantic film, it also wants to run out of the cinema, but that's because something else, right? So that means that the reason that things are connected is because To survive, our body needs to react before we think. Okay? And for us guys, we know that that's sometimes a problem. Okay? And for some women too, not you. So why am I talking about this? That's because all these things are what everybody has taught me through my life. It's all about theory, format, methods, and that raises something in me. That made me think when I start doing editing. I'm trying to make this move forward. I'm just so happy it hasn't broken down yet. Please. Please. He's losing ink. We are going to talk about the AR. Okay, so let's go back a minute and say, how do we start a film production? We get our script, yes. And we get some money, yes. And we go into production. Whoa, it's fantastic. Everything is cool. And we go into the editing room. And we start looking at the footage. And then the script is coming back to haunt us. Because something is not as we imagined, right? We are having the inevitable realization, the AR, that, just go back a bit. There we go. We are looking at our footage, and we think, why didn't we shoot that? Why, we need more close-ups, and there are too many lines, and people are speaking on top of each other, and there's so much back acting, and what's going on? Am I wrong? And we are not saying that people haven't prepared, because there's only such much you can prepare for making film, and then you still have the AR. Okay, so that's why I would like you to take you all into the writer's room for a second. Okay, so now you are all script writers, because we can learn something from script writing here, because the last manuscript is written in the editing room. And that's the best kept secret in Hollywood, and probably also in Copenhagen. So let's have a look. I would like to talk about Robert McKee. He is trying to put, into perspective what is important when we create a character. And as you probably have already found out, that I'm really focused on character building. Of course, story is important, but character is just, for me, way up here, because characters are what rocks for me, right? And what he says is there's four really important, as major steps. Preparation, and now we're in the script room. The principle of preparation is that at the inciting incident, major characters are incomplete. Do you know what an inciting incident is? Okay, would you like to explain it?
Yeah, I don't need a microphone. The inciting incident would be the incident that kind of kicks everything off. And if we're talking pages and screenwriting, it's about page 10 to 15.
Right on. And if you take a film like the small, what's called Star Wars, Episode 4, what would be the inciting incident in that film? Any ideas? But you have seen it, and you know it, yeah? Yeah, that's good, but that's not, it's not really convincing him. What is actually making him choose the Force? What makes him having no way back when his parents are killed? That is the inciting incident, meaning that is what changed everything. Now he can leave and go and be a Jedi Master. Be very afraid. So, what we're talking about here is, as an editor, you need to understand that this is how the script is written. So for me, it's important for you as editors and editors becoming editors to understand that the characters and how they are built in the script, we have to understand that when we edit. Doesn't it make sense? We need to have respect and understanding for this dimension. So the revelation of a character. Well, the principle of the revelation is a story's dynamic of events reveals the true character in contrast with or contradiction to characterization. That's also important because when we edit, we have the possibility to create our characters through their reactions to what they hear and what they are actually receiving. Okay, that makes sense? So all this written in the script can only be realized if we as editors understand how to create the characters in the editing so they look like that. Good. I think I need change. The principle is that the character change puts dimension into action. And that's important. That's an unfilled potential. And not at least, completion. The finest work of story art fulfills the protagonist's need and desire at the limits of human experience. And I know this is all script writing, but doesn't it make sense when we talk about editing? You know, how do we actually make sure that in every scene we somehow have an eye on where on our development of our characters are we? You know, is there a way we can actually put an extra layer, an extra dimension by the way they say the line, or maybe the way they don't say the line? Maybe there's something that should go, so something else could be there. Okay, so we have the desire. I'm sorry. And that's of course something we have to understand when we edit. How do we show if there's a rise in desire in people, in persons? You can of course all read it by Robert is writing it really, really good. But throughout the storytelling, as the protagonist struggles to put her life back in balance, she pushes her object of desire as far as her emotional and mental powers can reach. And you as editors need to understand that also when you edit, that you have a scale that you have to follow. You have a dynamic range you have to respect. And the need, of course, the empty inner space. And when now we are in screenwriting room, when we talk about need, it's because we can show as editors, you know, we can create more need in our characters by how we edit. And last and not least, she, the author of this film, therefore needs to complete the character's humanity. And if you change that author to editor, gentlemen and ladies, then you know your responsibility. Does that make sense? We have to make sure we create complete characters. So I changed the batteries. Question: is the spectator just a victim of the dupes of narrational illusion making? And that is important for me to say that this is why I've told you all these different things. Are we simple mechanical beings that can be influenced really easily? What do you think? Is there more to it than, you know, like juxtaposing things and creating a third meaning and everybody's going, ooh, ah? I think there is more. I don't think we are passive, and there's actually theory to support it. The searchlight theory of the mind. And I really like this because to have this picture that your audience is actually searching your film while they're watching it, right? With the searchlight, they're trying to find all the goodies you put out to them as editors, all the small twinkles that you have put in there to make the characters alive. The audience really wants to find them. And that's the searchlight theory of the mind by Karl Popper. So according to constructivist theory, perceiving and thinking are active goals-oriented processes. That means that we cannot just simply say that people are in the cinema and that we can do this and that and then they will feel in a certain way. There are many more layers than that. So if you look at the audience as people who wants to search for meaning, that's very important. And let's see, I really like the lighthouse. So the point is that sensory stimuli alone cannot do it. That says that the audio, the sound, simple action editing or the great lines, that won't do it alone. We need to put something more in there. And that's the other dimension I'm talking about. And then the organism constructs a perceptual judgment, of the basis of non-conscious interference. So the organisms, that is us, we will try to put things into like a scheme. We have to put things into so we understand it. You know, the picture of a bird is in our brain, so we can easily see there's a bird, even though we don't know what kind of bird it is. Our brain will know that right away by the scheme. Okay. So, and then again, because we are watching representational, film, when in watching a representational film, we draw and we look at other artwork and stuff and try to make sense of things. That means that the things we know, we will try to put into perspective. So, the audience is indeed active. That is my point. And I think that I would like to show you some editing examples of that. So, grouping comes before grasping, or seeking before seeing. That's important to remember. And I think that we can see that everything from recognizing objects and understanding dialogue to comprehend the film's overall story utilizes previous knowledge, which is then checked against the perceptual hypothesis. So everything we see is put into. So let's go practical, right? So now I will show you some example of this. Are you ready? Let's take that as a yes. Okay, so I'm going to show you some stuff from a film called On My Mind. Hello. That was a short film that I was lucky enough to edit, and it was Oscar nominated. So I'm going to, I think I'll just, if we have the sound, I could probably show the trailer. I just did a small trailer to give you an idea. So the main thing of the story is a guy walks into a bar, and then you never know what happens. Should we just try for 1 second to get the sound again? Maybe something went wrong up there. Okay, there we are. Save. Okay. I'm just going to see if something has changed, which I do not believe it has. That doesn't work without sound. So we are going straight into the editing examples. Okay, I would like to show you an example of what the issues you can have when you edit. And again, I know there has been a lot of theory, but it's actually it is actually all to end up here to make you understand what's how to use it. Here we have a situation where our main character is actually going to leave the bar because his state of mind is that he doesn't want to use any more time, he just wants to leave. But when you look at the acting, you can see that he's really nice he's really nice to the other actor. But he's standing a long time, and he doesn't really seem like, in my opinion, a person that wants to get out in a hurry. And that's important for his character, because he has this drink and something's really horrible is waiting for him. So we need to put that, even though the audience does not know that yet, we need to put that in a subcurrent level. And if we look at how it's actually shot, we can see why we have issues. If this should work, too much acting going on. The actors, because this was shot in only 2 days, so the actors are still trying to figure out, what cues to follow. And Camilla here is actually looking to the owner of the place, because she have a cue that she needs to look at him, because he's kind of overseeing what's going on. But it's just getting really, really overcrowded with information. And the main thing is that our main character is not being built up. So if he puts down the money, we have to wait until there. But what if we could do it in another way? What if we could actually retime parts of the shot like this? Let's see first of all how it looks without the retiming. It's a little sloppy, right? It's like he's still waiting too long, and you can see that he's not throwing the money. It's actually, it will be an okay cut, but it's not perfect. What if we then did the retiming? So we are moving his performance a couple of frames the other way. And that means that, in my perspective, he is a real person. As soon, you all know this, as soon as you know what someone else is talking about, you start doing something else, right? So, let's see what happens if we actually retime it and do like this. Now he's actually giving her the money. He starts looking down while she is still talking about how much he should pay, and he's leaving. Can you feel the difference? Okay, let's have another example here. This was one that gave me a lot of issues. He's having a drink, and then we cut to a really important shot where he's actually taking it in one step. And we wanted to have a lot of impact. This is how it actually looks. He's getting the drink. Does anyone notice what's wrong with this? It's a continuity cut and everything's fine. Did you notice he's closing his eyes twice? Let's look again. He's closing his eyes twice, right? So the energy of him taking this drink is kind of disappearing, right? It's not like, now I'm drinking it. Let's see what we can do. Because this is something, and you have to be aware when you edit, that if you are working on small screens, you might miss something like this. So you have to have a big screen when you check it, because then you can see that people are actually perhaps moving their eyes in a weird way. So what I actually did was I thought, what if I could, how much do I need? Could I somehow retime only his head so that he will only close his eyes in the close-up? So, there's his head. And that's being retimed exponentially, meaning that it's just slowing down just a bit, so I have enough frames so he won't close his eyes before we go into the close-up. So let's have a look how it looks now. You feel the difference? For me, there's a major impact when he actually is having the drink, because it's like Nothing else is interfering with me. And that's because your brains are actually analyzing the shot. What we have to remember when we edit is that just like in real life, if you are at a conversation with your new boss, your brain is going insane trying to analyze. Am I good enough? Will I get the job? Blah, 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 you know? Or in a new relationship, it's like, is she leaving me? Did she call because she wanted to wipe me out? Or did I say something wrong? Your brain is going insane. You're looking at people's faces trying to figure out what's going on. And you should think the same thing when you actually edit film. Because of course our characters will be looked at from the audience at the same way. I will take a couple of more. This one is really, really hard. So let's have a look at this, how it actually ends up in the film. And okay, there's a lot of energy in the shot, things are happening really fast, but let's have a look at how it's actually played out in the acting. If we do like this. Here, in the original shot, he's waiting a long time. And then he says his line, and then he leaves. And that would just totally stop the whole scene, right? It would not work. So, what happens here is that the image is actually split, meaning that Camilla's performance is actually retimed as well. So when she turns around, her phone will be in the right place. So it will match that Rasmus is actually just leaving the stage with saying his line. On the same here, this has been retimed so that her phone stays up, so it will actually cut and do a nice continuity cut like this. So these are some of the things that I normally do to make the acting better. I think I would like to take some questions now, and if you want to see more, I have more examples. This is a good one, and this is why life is very interesting. What is the worst technical difficulty you have ever had? Well, I say that we tried one of them today. So, but to be honest, well, the most complicated thing right now in filmmaking is the color science. That means that how we take the digital negative from cameras and how we use them in editing, and then how we get out to other systems and make sure that we preserve the color science and the dynamic range and all the colors of the skin tones and stuff. That's probably, as we say, never has so many people known so little about so much. It's really complicated stuff. So I would say that's something that I constantly work with and constantly trying to get more knowledge about how I can secure my pipeline. I'm also a grader, so that means that now I work in Resolve, DaVinci, and of course because it has really advanced color science, the editor is helping a lot because you can actually deliver from DaVinci. Let's see here. How do you decide what kind of pace is best for the film? Well, I will say who has given this question, by the way? The pace of the film? Hello. Well, the thing is, there's a pace of the film, but then there's a pace of the scene and the pace of part of the scene. So I think one of the thing you have to figure out is that I start actually from the bottom up. I say, what pace does the character has at a certain point of his development? So in the beginning, a character is in a certain way. I will edit him or her in a certain way, and then as they develop, I will change the pace of the character to emulate the character development. Does that make sense? And that I will do that with all the characters, so that eventually it will be like a dance, like a ballet, meaning that people are changing, but then they will be reacting differently. They will be looking differently together, and that will actually, the sum of that will be the new pace. what you can see is that there's, you know, the term story arc. You know that each character can have an arc, and each scene can actually also have an arc. So when I decide that, I actually start from the bottom down. I try not to think about continuity when I edit. I start with the AR, no, IR, sorry. I start to take a scene and then I work with the genuine artistic performance in the scene. And I kind of put the script a little away in the beginning. I'd really try to figure out what is the best I can do for this actor, what is the best I can do for the director, and then I make that work. And then when that actually works, I have a resource. And then I can put that resource together with another resource, and if it doesn't really fit what the film should be, we can adjust. But I think it's important to work from the bottom up. Does that make sense? I mean, to do character development, even in editing. And then, like a sandbox, you go, okay, what if someone I mean, I know you can take the script and go, shot, close up, blah, 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 she leaves, but you can also go in there and try to figure out, is there something before we said action that really works well? Is there something after we actually had a cut where the actor is just relaxed because she's done, and then something is appearing in her face or eyes that actually fits a different narrative somewhere in the story? Yes? So work from make some exercises, I would say. You know, try to edit things from down, forget the script, and then just try to look at the character's performance. Yeah. Whoa, my God. How do you determine whether a shot should be cut for a time even? Okay, so this is about the value of a cut?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So you mean, how do I decide if if parts of if the cut is valuable for the film?
Yes.
Well, I would say, I'm a little like Erik Balling here. I would say, well, it needs to develop the character, it needs to develop the story, or have some kind of action that will create some suspense or something. And if two of the three does not comply, I will change it somehow. So that is also transport. I mean, sometimes continuity is not your friend. You know, sometimes you get caught in continuity editing because then she has to walk up and go there and blah blah blah, and all the stuff you did on set that you thought was really important. You have to be your own. How do you say? It's really difficult. Are you directing yourself or? Okay, yeah. So that's really hard. You know, if you do everything yourself and then come back and do editing, you know how can you be the person not on set when you're on set? So I think it's like that post society. You have to jump up on the table and look at things from a different perspective, because you are biased in the way that you had a lot of good experiences during the shooting. You felt that this was the best shot and that was the best shot, and you can almost when you see the shots, you recognize the feeling of being on set, right? You know that, and that's not the best. That's not worth anything in an editing room. We have to look at the shots, the bare shots, and say, well, is this telling, or is this way of putting things together actually telling a story? You had some more questions. What if your favorite part of it? What my favorite part of editing is, I think that when I discovered that I was actually good at it, that was really nice. And I would say, doing documentary work, I have learned so much as an editor doing documentaries. I mean, that's like the Forrest Gump effect. When you start doing documentary, you're wearing shackles because you want to have like cinematic feelings and storytelling, and you seldom have all the footage you need to actually create a story. So you are working with all kinds of methods and forms to make things be beautiful or wonderful or bad or how is not bad, dangerous or mind-provoking. And then when you do fiction, you have so many opportunities. So I think that I've learned a lot from doing documentaries, and what I've learned is to take that part of the documentary editing into film editing, when we don't leave any stone unturned. I mean, we look at all the footage, we look at everything, we ditch the script report without telling anyone, and we look at all the shots just to figure out where the resources are. because that's kind of the building blocks. Yeah. That's a good one. How do you approach resolving difference between script and creative choices on set? Who has anyone? Yeah, I think that the most important thing is to have more than one take. I mean, please do more than one take. Try different things. It's really important when you work with actors that you understand that doing different paces in your shot, doing a fast pace and a slow pace is important because it will give more opportunities in the editing room. Yeah, that's important. If you could give only one piece of advice, editing, what would you do? Well, one piece of advice is today, I think when you can get almost any software for almost free, and that is watch a lot of film. If you want to edit, watch genres and watch films and learn from the best. I think that's really, really important that you get your wide angle on your experiences and understand that there are many genres. And actually, when you start working with film, and if you go into screenwriting as well, you will understand that there's actually genres that is transcending genres. You can do a film that is one type of film in an action format that is actually a jungle film or something else. So there's so much to learn. So I will really say that if you want to be good editors, you should look at screenwriting as well, because you will understand the world of story building and world building better. And I think that's a real good tool for editing. What's your... I'm sorry, I can't really read that. Yeah. Is there more valuable to expect? Well, the thing about conventional editing techniques, I think that, as I just showed you, sometimes you need to work with what's happening in the shots, how things are moving around, and cut to that, and sometimes you need continuity editing. I don't think one thing is the only right thing. I think you need to juggle it. So if I can answer the question like that. Anyone wants to ask a question now? Let us start on the... Yeah?
I'm just curious about you personally, because you said you're a colorist as well, so
Yeah.
I assume that's why you use DaVinci, but how long have you been editing for?
I've been editing. I started out as a freelance since 1992. And I started actually editing way before, because when I started it was like film. So I was about 14 years old when I bought my first Super 8 camera with a Snyder Aragon optics and 10-minute reels, which was a German camera. And I still have it, and it works. There's a funny story about that, because we didn't have any money at all. But there was this carnival that just started the year before. And what we learned was that because it was in a bank holiday kind of thing, so there was no food and drink. So at the second carnival, everybody was going there to sell beers. And I thought, well, if we do 1,000 sandwiches, we can maybe earn money enough to buy a camera. So we actually made 1,000 sandwiches and put it in the freezer, and we took it out. And for 3 days we sold them, and we earned half of what we had to pay for the camera for sandwich, selling sandwiches. And because my father died a couple of years before, we had a little life insurance, so my mother put in the rest. So we had this really great camera. We just couldn't afford buying films for it because it was so expensive. We used all our money. But the camera actually have a different story, because one of my friends called Michael, he was working as a focus puller for Susanne Bier. She was doing her first Dogma film called Love You Forever. And she had a big issue with the script because there were flashbacks. And as you probably know, the Dogma rules are that you are not allowed to play around with post-production afterwards. You have to have in-camera looks. So they were sitting there and having a problem. And then Michael calls me and said, I'm sitting here with Susanne, and I was just remembering that the camera you bought for 1,000 sandwich, do you still have that? I said, yeah. Could we borrow that? Because I think we could actually solve the problem with the film. So all the flashback scenes in her film is actually shot on my Super 8 camera, which we bought for 1,000 sandwiches. So that's a side story. But I think just to be interested in learning more, I'm also a sound guy, so I think that, film is a team effort, and it's important that you as an editor are interested and curious about other the other professional traits more and more. I mean, I think that there's more and more use for hybrid talents. I consider myself a hybrid talent before it was even invented. I think most of you should have more than one talent. You should both work as editors. You should force your photographer or DP into the editing room and go, look, learn, because then they will be able to produce and make better pictures, because when they start understanding what's necessary in the editing room, they will be your friend. And I think that's really, really important. Yeah, I think we are almost up for time. I could show you many more things. I also have some stuff for the Oscar nomination, blah, blah, blah. But I think we will skip that. You have been here for, unless you want to see it, of course. Anyone? No. I think we're good. If any of you have questions, you can approach me afterwards. I will happily, answer any questions, and you can have a look at the project down here as well if you want to. And I would really apologize for the technical hiccups. We thought we did everything we could yesterday testing out, but the Russians. So thank you very much for your time. I hope I have, I just want to inspire you to go, and actually I have prepared something here. Because, of course, I would like to thank the ScanDesign Foundation who has sponsored this event. Also, if you want to get in touch with me, I can be found on Instagram, and as you know, I do storytelling and editing training. Also, I would like to focus your attention to Jen Austen's script notes. If you are interested in storytelling, even though you're just a photographer or editor, whatever, the script notes page is really, really cool, because it's all about things that matters for screenwriters. And I have, as I said before, when you have the IR experience, that you have to rewrite the script in the editing room, it's really good to know something about script writing, right? And I think that that's what I can give you. So if you have any questions later or want to contact me, I would happily answer. And I thank you for your time, and
thank you for your perseverance.
Well, I'm trying.